Our story opens beneath a crimson moon hanging over the remains of a shattered city. Across the wreckage of the ruined metropolis, Xian lay bruised, bleeding, and barely conscious. In the distance, demons rampaged without the slightest hint of mercy, their massive bodies smashing through skyscrapers and ripping apart steel and concrete as though it were paper. Marching behind them was a terrifying legion of zombies and undead horrors starving for human flesh. The last remaining survivors fled in panic, desperately holding on to scraps of hope that no longer existed. Meanwhile, Xian's battered body was continuously stomped and kicked while he was sprawled helplessly on the ground. Nearby, a witch giggled mockingly at his miserable state before casually pouring gasoline over every inch of his wounded body. Beside her stood a caped villain, both of them bidding him sarcastic farewells while proudly displaying the treasure they had stolen from him. The caped man had taken the most valuable possession of the Xian family, the token of the 6 great hells. As the gasoline seeped into his open wounds, burning painfully against his torn flesh, Xian glared at the man he once considered his closest friend. Yet, even in that agonizing moment, his greatest concern remained his missing younger sister. The villain activated the token, unleashing the power of a monstrous black bear adorned with a necklace made from human skulls. Wearing a smug grin, the traitor admitted that Xian's innocent little sister had already been dragged to her death because she had become troublesome. Though, according to him, her pure blood still had some use. Fury surged through Xian's veins, but his body was too broken to even stand, much less retaliate. The fleeing survivors looked toward the villain with admiration and hope. To them, he was Shujun, the strongest awakened ability user blessed by divine beings. As Shujun wrapped an arm around the witch and lifted off into the sky, he left Xian with one final cruel gift. Alilaita. The tiny flame dropped toward the gasoline-soaked ground. At the same moment, the towering demon continued its destructive march until the summoned giant bear broke free of its restraints and charged forward. The colossal creatures collided violently, wrestling like monstrous titans in the middle of the ruined city. And then the fire reached Xian. Flames instantly swallowed his entire body. He clenched his teeth as the unbearable agony of being burned alive consumed him. His flesh charred while his consciousness faded, yet deep within his heart he screamed for another chance. If an afterlife truly existed, then he swore he would never forgive the people who betrayed him. Hatred and agony flooded his soul. Suddenly, his right eye fused with the flames themselves. Then he heard it, a playful feminine voice. It granted his desperate wish. His heartbeat slowed. Once, twice, then with one final beat, time itself reversed. The infernal flames gathered within his eye while every ounce of physical pain and emotional suffering engraved itself onto his soul forever. Xian suddenly jolted awake inside the safety of his bedroom, drenched in sweat as if he had just escaped a horrifying nightmare. The burns were gone. The wounds had vanished. Breathing heavily, he searched around his bed until he found his phone. The date displayed on the screen made his pupils shrink. July 1st, 2028. 3 entire days before the apocalypse. Still unable to fully process what had happened, he stumbled into the bathroom and splashed water onto his face. Everything felt real. His body was healthy again. Only one thing had changed. His right eye had become pale gold. That was the mark left behind by the fire seed buried inside him when he died in the flames. After calming himself down surprisingly quickly, Xian changed clothes and stepped outside. The neighborhood around him was already unpleasant enough to look at, but he knew that 3 days later it would become far worse. The apocalypse would arrive. Humans would mutate into zombies. Mysterious gods would descend upon Earth. Some people would awaken supernatural abilities, but resistance would ultimately prove meaningless. Cities would transform into hellish wastelands ruled by demons, while the remaining survivors fought desperately over scraps of food and shelter. And among those who betrayed him were his girlfriend, the witch Rulin, and his so-called best friend, Shujun. Almost as if fate wanted to mock him, Rulin suddenly called his phone. Xian answered calmly while the woman's sharp voice immediately exploded through the speaker. She complained about him not answering earlier, and accused him of trying to break up with her. Rulin had always acted like this. Anytime something didn't go her way, she threatened to end the relationship. In the past, the pathetic version of himself would desperately apologize and beg for forgiveness like a loyal dog. But now, he felt absolutely nothing. So he simply replied, "Sure." The response stunned her into silence. Rulin clearly expected him to panic and start pleading with her. Instead, Xian coldly ended the relationship on the spot. He was done serving as her obedient puppet. Before she could continue yelling, he hung up and blocked her number entirely. For the first time in a long while, he finally felt a sense of peace. But he didn't have time to waste. Back at Rulin's house, the Furious Witch hurled her phone across the room after realizing she had been blocked. She could not believe her obedient little servant dared to cut her off so casually. Meanwhile, Shujun sat nearby after the two of them had just finished sleeping together. He lazily asked whether Xian had somehow discovered their affair, though he doubted it. Rulin always kept Xian tightly controlled. Shujun merely laughed. He didn't care either way. Instead, he was more interested in a message from his father regarding several ancient family heirlooms filled with spiritual energy. Apparently, something enormous was about to happen soon. That reminder caused Rulin to recall the antique token belonging to Xian's family. More specifically, it was currently in the possession of Xian's younger sister. Since she believed Xian would eventually crawl back, begging for forgiveness, she planned to demand the token from him later. Feeling pleased with her own cleverness, Rulin climbed back onto Shujun's lap while the two continued their shameless affair. Meanwhile, the token they coveted rested inside Xian's palm. It appeared to be nothing more than an old, rusted slab of metal. After abandoning his part-time job, Xian traveled over 30 kilometers by cab to reach his sister's school. The moment she saw him, she immediately noticed the strange color of his eye and asked what happened. He avoided explaining. Instead, he simply asked one question. "Do you trust your big brother?" The siblings had always relied on one another since childhood. If there was one person in the world she trusted completely, it was him. So naturally, she nodded. Without hesitation, Xian told her to pack her belongings and come with him immediately. She agreed right away and only requested 2 hours to prepare her things. Surprised, Xian asked why she didn't demand an explanation first. Her answer was simple: because her brother would never harm her. Watching her run off happily to pack, Xian silently vowed that this time he would protect her no matter what. To survive the coming apocalypse, he needed the heirloom token. The only thing he remembered from his previous life was Shujun somehow using it to open a portal and summon that monstrous black bear. As Xian stared at the rusty artifact, the fire seed inside his golden eye suddenly reacted. A stream of black flame shot out and struck the token. Instantly, the rust melted away. The artifact revealed its true form. Before Xian could react, space itself twisted around him. A violent wormhole swallowed his body whole. Moments later, he was thrown into an entirely separate dimension filled with endless darkness. At the center of this realm stood an unimaginably massive tower wrapped in countless crimson chains stretching into infinity. Xian couldn't even begin to describe the horrifying sight before him. Inside the tower were endless monsters, demons, and grotesque creatures imprisoned behind iron bars. Their terrifying gazes locked onto him the moment he approached. The pressure alone nearly suffocated him. Then suddenly, heavenly lightning descended. A devastating tribulation slammed into the tower with enough force to shake the realm itself. The lightning specifically targeted the monsters that dared glare at Xian with hostility. Their grotesque bodies were torn apart, while agonized screams echoed through the darkness. The destructive power crackled violently around him, as though acknowledging his existence. And then he heard that same playful voice again. The mysterious figure slowly appeared before him. She smiled mischievously, exposing sharp fangs. Xian instantly raised his guard while staring at the breathtaking woman standing ahead. She introduced herself as Sadaji, a beautiful nine-tailed fox spirit. Bowing respectfully, she greeted him as the new warden of Hell's prison. Thousands upon thousands of years ago, the immortal emperor and 12 supreme immortals had joined forces to forge the demon suppression tower. That creation eventually became known as the Six Great Hells. Countless evil beings throughout history had been imprisoned there for unforgivable sins. Day and night, heavenly lightning endlessly tortured them, and the token in Xian's possession was the only key capable of controlling the prison. That was why Sadaji referred to him as the new warden. Since it was his first visit, the fox spirit invited him to inspect the tower personally while she explained everything in detail. Curious about his newfound power, Xian accepted. The moment he stepped through the entrance, violent waves of chaotic energy surged toward him from every direction. Sadaji warned him to stay alert. As if reacting instinctively, the golden eye ignited. Dark flames burst outward and protected him from the hostile energy. Sadaji watched with clear admiration. She explained that the fire inside his eye was called the Nether Fire Seed, the very force that reversed time and resurrected him after death. She also admitted that she had reached out to him when his life was fading away. The bond between the fox spirit and the Xian family stretched back countless generations. She simply could not watch him die helplessly. According to Sadaji, the rage and despair he felt during his death awakened the seed completely. Now that the apocalypse was approaching again, Xian finally possessed the strength to change fate itself. As they continued deeper into the tower, Sadaji explained that the six great hells contained multiple layers. The higher one climbed, the stronger the imprisoned creatures became. However, access depended entirely on the Warden's soul power. At Xian's current level, only the first floor remained accessible. Behind the first prison cell stood a familiar monster, the gigantic black bear, the same creature Shujun summoned in the future. Curiosity led Xian closer to the cell. The beast suddenly awakened with a deafening roar. Yet instead of attacking, the terrifying creature behaved like an excited pet. The giant bear happily praised Xian for becoming the new warden, explaining that the prisoners had waited thousands of years for someone worthy to appear. It even shamelessly offered its services to him. She complained that these ancient demon kings had already become attention-starved beasts after only a few thousand years of imprisonment. However, not every prisoner welcomed him warmly. One chained bird-like demon coldly declared that he would rather endure heavenly lightning for another 1,000 years than kneel before a weak human child. Xian silently observed the countless creatures around him. Then his eyes landed on another prisoner, a muscular winged demon with a sharp beak-like face. He recognized it instantly from ancient myths. Lai Sansi, the thunder god. Sadaji praised him for recognizing the legendary being so quickly before explaining the ranking system of monsters. She explained that in this world monsters were divided into the ranks of soldiers, generals, commanders, kings, sages, and levels beyond that. Since Xian only had access to the first layer of the tower, he could currently only view general rank criminals. The stronger he became, and the higher he climbed, the stronger the prisoners he would meet. Rumors claimed that the highest floor even imprisoned immortal sage rank criminals. Sadaji had once heard Lady Nawasai mention that god-level beings were also once sealed inside the tower, but those legends had long disappeared with time. The fox encouraged the young warden to train harder and rise through the ranks until he gained control over the entire prison. Xian was naturally overwhelmed by the sheer scale of everything. The tower was far more terrifying than he had ever imagined. Even the general rank monsters on the lowest floor already possessed enough power to bring massive destruction. The prisoners on the top floor would definitely be catastrophic existences capable of ending worlds. But regardless of how terrifying those beings were, they would all eventually become prisoners beneath the warden's rule. In the coming apocalypse, he possessed the chance to become the strongest existence. With his current tiny amount of soul power, this was the limit for now. Xian needed to absorb far more soul power to unlock additional rooms and continue ascending. Sadaji also explained that soul power was completely different from awakened abilities. Abilities could be improved through crystal cores obtained from zombies and mutants, while soul power could only be gained by killing gods. In 3 days, those deities would descend onto Earth, and his hunt would officially begin. Before wiping out the gods, he first needed to complete all his preparations. Soon Xian arrived at the lively antique street. In his previous life, someone had once obtained a binding immortal rope from one of the stalls and later became an extremely powerful ability user. At this point in time, the treasure should still be hidden somewhere on this street. Luckily, the aura released by the antiques could not escape the detection of his netherfire seed. By coincidence, the head of the Song family and Shu Jun's father Song Tian was also shopping through the street alongside Elder Hang, his trusted antique evaluator. Song Tian noticed Zion observing the stalls and became confused why the young man seemed interested in antiques.